Hello everyone, my name is Verdict from the Classic Paladin YouTube channel, and I'm bringing you guys a really special video mini-series called If I Were to Fix the Classic Paladin. In this video, I will share all the problems of the Paladin in WoW Classic that are crucial, explain them, and theorize on how to fix them in part 2. Basically, if I was a class developer, how would I do that? Let's begin! But first, to answer a question that most likely pop in your head, and that would be, who the hell are you even to critique vanilla? Well, I'm a Red Paladin who has played vanilla since the Phoenix days. I have done the entirety of WoW Classics content multiple times on different servers. I have achieved rank run logs, and I have played both casually and hardcore as a Red and Prot. I am indeed one of the big Reds out there, but that's enough of me bragging. The reason for which I share this with you is so that you would know that my words come from experience. So, let's go. The Paladin's release in WoW Classic was actually not done properly. According to Kevin Jordan, the class designer for Vanilla, the Paladin came out different than what they planned. Unfinished, because it was reworked at the very last second. Not to mention that there was no guide that was supposed to teach us how to play it, like, other classes. The guide for WoW Classic's Paladin actually contained the beta version instead of the live. Basically, you'd be scratching your head trying to figure out what's going on. You'd start to learn something about the class itself, and all of a sudden the game changes, and this cycle continued all the way up to patch 1.11. Again, a fact that Kevin stated was that the Paladin just didn't make sense in the face of class fantasy. I mean, think about it. You had a plate user sitting all the way back in the raid, spamming heals and blessings, or alongside with the DPS doing mediocre damage, or failing to maintain aggro on the boss because the game's mechanics didn't treat the Prot Paladin fairly compared to others. WoW itself was against the class performing, and the development for it was just not there, and that is a fact. But that's enough of me torturing Mr. Jordan. Keep in mind that if the Paladin wasn't what it is right now, I doubt myself that I'd find such passion for it. So in a sense, I really mean what I'm about to say. Thanks, Kev. I really do appreciate what you did. Now, let's just get into details about the game's combat systems. As most of you guys know, WoW is separated into two different types of content, PvE and PvP, that work of course in separate ways. For this video, we'll talk only about the PvE aspect of the Paladin. The PvE side, as we figured out throughout the years since WoW's launch, is also separated into different aspects, or sections if you may. PvE at below level 60 and level 60 and above. Of course, the level cap being an absolute sweet spot for the Paladin's PvE performance in general. But what do I really mean about a sweet spot? At level 60 and below, Paladins are actually viable in every single role, healing, tanking, and dealing damage, essentially DPS. Red Paladin, which is of course the spec that I play in WoW Classic, is actually viable and in some cases even optimal. That being Strath and Sholomance dungeons, or in general anything that has to do with undead or demon combat. Protection Paladins, on the other hand, are doing quite well compared to any other tank in fact. Yes, they use mana, but that's irrelevant when you think of combat length in dungeons. It is argued amongst the tanks in WoW Classic that Paladins are indeed the best dungeon tanks, which is good to hear. Holy, on another hand, was nothing to be stressed about since it was viable. No one would ever skip a healer for dungeons. At level 60 and above, however, things really start to hit the Paladin far too rough, especially in damage. For the Red Pally, things are looking quite awful. You have a spec which consists of white damage, spell damage, and a lot of critting. 40% of the white hits are of course being dampened down by quite a bit, thanks to glancing blows. They cannot crit, and as I mentioned, this spec is here wanting to crit all the time. The holy damage, on the other hand, can be resisted. There are no holy resistances in the game, bear in mind, they were removed, but that damage could be fully resisted due to level difference. Basically, the Paladin is fighting war on two fronts. You lose around 40% of your crit from glancing, around 20 to 40% of the damage done by white hits from glancing, your seal of command can be resisted, your judgments can also be resisted too. Basically, the only constant DPS increase that's absolutely working to your own benefit is Consecration. It can't resist and it can scale fantastically with your class spec, but it barely deals any significant damage and is quite costly. On the protection side, however, things are looking kind of brighter than the red. With recent discovery of blessing spam that can generate good amounts of threat, Paladin tanks are definitely more viable than Reds. Their AoE threat generation still does better than either warriors or druids. They can off-tank boss adds with relative ease and are not squishy at all to begin with. However, boss threat is still an issue. No taunt causes them to be quite bad for a lot of bosses, but however, if your guild goes slow and steadily, a prot pally can actually tank some fights. One of the huge issues surrounding the prot spec is that it doesn't have any source of instant threat generation compared to warriors or druids, who can just manage the beginning of the fight like a piece of cake. The highest threat generation is Holy Shield, which is not reliable sadly, and it's almost never consuming all charges from boss hits, simply because the blocks that you do occur only after parries and dodges done by you. The core idea of tanking in Classic is pretty much this: get enough defense to survive while still being able to dish threat, reach uncrushable in order for you to pretty much tank easily, don't get crit, which happens at 440 defense. Prot pallies, however, can follow two of those rules. In order for you to achieve uncrushable, you need to get crit, to benefit from Adopt, which increases your block rate for a short while by 30%. With a combination of that and Holy Shield, you reach uncrushable with fair ease and you start dealing a lot of threat. But Paladins are far too squishier than warriors, and a crit landed on a serious boss fight would prove to be fatal. Protection in general is in conflict with the game's combat mechanics above level 60. There are ways to play around those issues, but they aren't really effective. The only way to be on the brink of viable as a prot paladin right now is actually to spam blessings, which is apparently a lot of fun. For Holy Paladins, there isn't much to say really. Get spell crit with plus healing on you and just stay in the back of the raid group and spam Flash of Light. That's it, as boring as it sounds, but keep in mind that Holy Paladins just don't face the same problems as their other two specs. So after I explain the main issues for the Paladins, we get the full picture, which is, of course, mechanics that absolutely destroy the red spec and the lack of attention to that, skills that contradict game mechanics that cause the prot spec to be in some sort of a paradoxical existence, lack of class fantasy and useful tools to mitigate those problems, and being absolutely boring with lack of combat and heal depth. Thank you so much for checking out this video. Usually the parts in the end of this video are, like in the end of all my videos, are kind of genuine. I really like this type of feel, to have a personal connection with the people that watch me, you know, just to know that I'm not going to script every single word that I say in the video. So thank you again so much for watching, and for part 2 it will be really fun to run my mind rampant, you know, just to unleash all my fantasies behind how Red Paladin really should feel like. To give you an idea on what part 2 will be about is I'm going to rework spells, I'm not going to rework game mechanics, I'm just going to make the Paladin adaptive towards the problems that the game presents, and I think that will be really fun. It will be most importantly balanced if it ever comes to, you know, to get remotely close to my ideas. But, you know, I really wish that one day, you know, in the future, Blizzard would most likely see a video of mine and say, hey, this is actually a really cool idea. We should probably use that, or, you know, talk to him and tell him, hey, that's really cool. We really like this idea. Can we use it? I'm like, yes, thank you. So, thanks so much for sticking again, guys. I will also release a red guide sometime in the near future. Keep in mind that that is the hardest part. And I want to make sure that everything I tell you is absolutely truthful and genuine. So thank you again for watching. I hope you sub, I hope you like the video, and I hope to see you again in one of my videos. So bye bye, thank you so much for watching, and yeah, see ya.